Hello, Com 302. Welcome to week 4 and my concept spotlight video for expectancy violations. I'm Amelia Sprague and I will be guiding you through today. As an overview, this is from the second half of chapter 4, so if you'd like to follow along in your textbook, most of my bullet points are your bolded headlines. So we will be going over what an expectancy violation is and why it is an important thing to study. I will also go over Burgoon's expectancy violation theory, and I'm sorry if I mangle her name, as I am terrible with names. I will also go over what types of expectancy violations there are within close relationships. There are 9 major categories we will go over. And lastly, we will go over expectancy violations within specific contexts. So what is an expectancy violation? An expectancy violation occurs whenever a person's behavior is different than what is expected within the situation. That can be anything from personal to private to public to close to distant type of relationships. Expectancy violations are part of human nature, as communication is also part of human nature. This is an important aspect of communication to study because violations and violating behavior make it difficult for people to predict and explain other people's behaviors. We are creatures of habit as human beings, and we like to have general expectations when we go into certain situations. And expectancy violations make that kind of hard to maintain. Next, we will go over Judy Burgoon's expectancy violation theory. First, Judy Burgoon herself is a professor of communications, family studies, and human development at the University of Arizona. She originally developed this theory in 1978, and the original focus of the theory was on violations of personal space. The downside of the original theory focus was that it was very one-sided, and it did not account for reciprocity within interpersonal communication. When she did finally expand her theory, and there's been all kinds of spin-offs, and it's fantastic, there's a lot that goes into it. Once she expanded her theory, she broadened her scope drastically, and she expanded everything to accommodate for didactic interactions within communication. So there are 2 major violation categories within expectancy violations. Those are predictive and prescriptive. A predictive violation tells people what to expect in a given situation based on what normally occurs within that particular context and/or relationship. This is a very specific violation. This is something that would occur. It would only be a violation within your relationship with that one person. It may be a violation between you and your mother, but it may not be a violation between you and your father type of thing. The other side of it is prescriptive. This tells people what to expect based off of general rules of appropriateness. This is a much broader example. While it may not be a communicative example, something that I can offer as a perspective is driving. We all have a general rule of thumb that if you're going slow, you stay to the right. If you're going fast and you'd like to pass people, you go to the left and you can be speedy over there. It's prescriptive. Next, according to expectancy violation theory, there are 3 factors that affect expectancies within the relationships. The first is the communicator characteristics. This refers to the individual differences between the communicators that include age, sex, ethnic background, and personality traits. For example, I would call my boyfriend or best friend dude. Neither of them are going to be offended by that, including my own significant other. He's used to it. But I would never call my mother dude. That would be a difference within age, and it would definitely affect the expectancies. My mom would be livid if I called her dude. The next aspect is relational characteristics. This refers to factors such as how close we are to somebody, the type of relationship we maintain with them, whether it's platonic, romantic, or a business relationship, and what type of experiences we share with those people. The final aspect is context. This can include both situational and cultural. An example of this within communication would be hand gestures. Certain countries symbol three, doing this, others do this, others do, that's not three, that's three, things like that, rock on. Um, Things like biting a thumb in America mean absolutely nothing, but it's considered an insult. So context is huge within that. One of the other aspects of expectancy violation theory is how we respond to expectancy violations. According to EVT, there are two major aspects. That is violation valence, which is the positive or negative side of it, and the reward value of the partner depends on how we react, or is a factor within how we react. So the violation valence, or the value that we put on the expectancy violation, this tends to require attention to your partner within situations, as all situations are different, and we can ascertain meanings only by observing within that specific context. It offers a sense of clarity, is a great way to put it. So positive violations occur when the unexpected behavior is perceived as better than what was expected. Within close relationships, positive violations tend to create relational satisfaction and happiness. On the flip side of that, negative violations occur when behavior is perceived to be worse than the behavior that was expected. This creates relationship dissatisfaction and anger in a lot of cases. Now, it must be noted that not all expectations are fair to the partners. And because they are not always fair, your expectations in the long run can actually sometimes be harmful to the relationship. So that's part of paying attention to your partner setting and the situation you're in the context. That makes a huge difference. So moving on to the reward value of the partner. This ties into this previous week's lessons on attraction, whether it's a positive rewarding value or a negative rewarding value. So within EVT, this states that behaviors are ambiguous. Whether they are positive or negative is often dependent on who is actually enacting those violations and whether you see them as being a positive or negative rewarding partner. We tend to interpret unexpected behaviors consistently with our first impressions of those people. So if we originally saw these people as being a positive rewarding value, we're more likely to accept their, whether it be a positive or a negative violation, we're more willing to be lenient with them. As an example, positive violations with a rewarding partner tend to, there tends to be some reciprocity. So if a positive violation occurs, you tend to respond with another positive thing. It's an overall good thing. But with the rewarding partner, if a negative violation occurs, there tends to be some sort of compensation, in a sense, in a way to save the relationship and get it back to that positive rewarding aspect. A lot of the times, behaviors that conflict with your initial evaluation or your first impression of that people then cause us to look a little bit harder at the situation and reevaluate the expectancy violation a little bit more. So next, moving on to the types of expectancy violations. As you can see, there's a nice little list. So we'll start with criticism or accusations. These are actions that are critical of the person or that tend to accuse them of some type of offense. For a personal example, I would say I am very critical when my boyfriend does the dishes but doesn't do them well. So I expected the dishes to be done, but I expected them to be done at a certain level of wellness, and they weren't. So I become critical. Next is relationship escalation. I can never say that word properly. This is actions that confirm or intensify the commitment to a person in a relationship. So a very obvious example of this within a romantic partnership would be a marriage proposal. That's moving on to the next step, or giving a key to move in, or just giving a key or saying, hey, you can leave your toothbrush here. That is an escalation. On the flip side of that, Our number 3 is relationship de-escalation, which are actions that imply a desire to decrease the intimacy level within the relationship. So that could be, an example would be, again, within romantic partners, if your partner and yourself have shared a bed at one person's house for the last month, and something happens during the day and your partner goes, you know what, I think I'm gonna go home and sleep in my own bed today. This can be an act of de-escalation, which was not expected. Our 4th type is uncharacteristic rational behavior or relational behavior. These are actions that are not consistent with the way that a person defines that specific relationship. So that could be, if you have a relationship with a classmate and it's purely a platonic academic relationship, and that classmate, while you're working on a project, kind of leans into you and gets a little bit flirty, that can be uncharacteristic relational behavior. You don't see the flirting side of that person within an academic setting. It doesn't fit. Next is uncharacteristic social behavior, which are actions that do not have relational implications, but are simply not expected from that person in that context. That could be, while it may not affect your personal relationship with somebody, if you have, say, your president standing up at a podium, swigging a shot of whiskey, standing at the podium. That's a social faux pas. It doesn't affect you personally within that person, but it's unexpected. You wouldn't think that they would do that. Similarly, our transgressions are number 6. These are actions that are violations of taken for granted rules of a relationship. While this may not be chugging whiskey from a podium, this would be something of the nature of a significant other cheating within a relationship. You expect trust, and they completely violate that with a physical act. Moving on, our acts of devotion are next. These are actions that imply that a person really views the partner and or relationship as being special. This can be something, again, like a marriage proposal. This is a way of making sure somebody realizes that they want to be in your life. Or it can be things as simple as filling up your gas because you want to make sure that that person is safe and they can stay in their vehicle and you'll take the shot for them or something of that nature. Next, on the opposite side of that, is actions of disregard. These are actions that imply a person considers that partner or relationship as unimportant. A good example of this would be ignoring cell phone calls. I sent you to voicemail because I just didn't want to talk to you. I want nothing to do with you. And our final expectancy violation are gestures of inclusion. These are actions that show unexpected desires to include the partner or person in activities of that person's life. A great personal example of this for me is I lived with a young lady for about a year, and when our lease ended, I purchased a home and she moved up to Washington State. This was about 5 years ago. She's now getting married and has asked me to be a bridesmaid. She's making sure I'm included in her life still. Moving on, we have expectancy violations within specific contexts. So flirtation and sexual activity was our first one. Within this, unexpected behaviors occur to varying degrees, and the perception as to whether it's positive or negative is largely based on your attraction levels. So a lot of this goes back to week 3 as well. My favorite new term from this chapter would be the social lubrication effect. This essentially is you're drunk. It makes flirtation and interactions occur. The definition from the book is social lubrication effect occurs when alcohol makes interactions less stressful and more enjoyable. Being drunk. First date expectations vary based off of the goals of the partners, and those goals tend to influence the expectations and the communication. If partners go into the first date with similar goals, they're most likely to have a fulfilled or successful date. The most common goals within first dates are to have fun and reduce uncertainty, investigate romantic potential, develop friendships, and the potential for some sexual activity. Moving on to hurtful events, there are 3 main types. We have moral violations, trust violations, and social violations. Moral violations are behaviors that deviate from what is considered right or moral. This could be like cheating at a game of cards. Trust violations occur when a person behaves in a way that is deceptive or violates relational rules. This could be sharing a secret that your best friend entrusted you with. And social violations occur when people fail to act in a relationally appropriate way and instead engage in rude, cold, critical, or condescending behavior. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. And our last, my bad, go back. Oh, no, technical difficulties. Well, our last aspect was modality switches. This is when expectancies change because you go from being online communicators to face-to-face communicators. The main thing within that was if you have had short-term conversation online and you go to face-to-face, being face-to-face actually decreases uncertainty and creates a stronger relationship. Where on the flip side, if you had long-term online communication and go to in-person, it decreases or increases uncertainty because you just don't know what to expect. So lastly would be my engagement prompt for this week. I would like the class to tell each other about an occasion where you experienced an unexpected violation or an expectancy violation. Tell us which one of the 9 types of violation occurred, and then go ahead and associate that with being either a positive violation or a negative violation, and tell us why it was positive or negative. And thanks for hanging in there with me, guys. I know that this was a long one. See you next week.